Alright guys, so it's been a crazy few days. I've got through the Lost Metal, absolutely blitzed it with me and my wife. My wife read the physical copy. I did the audible version by Michael Kramer. I'm going to talk about that, but I'm going to go overall, it's spoiler free, what I liked about the book, what I didn't like, and whether you should pick it up.
Thank you to my patrons for supporting the channel and making it the best it can be.
Okay, so this is going to be a spoiler-free review of The Lost Metal. I'm going to kind of talk about, what's happened in the previous books too, so there's going to be spoilers there. But everything I'm going to talk about, it's only going to be on the dust jacket. So as you've mentioned on the dust jacket here, if you've read the little synopsis of the dust jacket, why don't I read that for us here? For years, frontier lawman turned big city senator Waxilium Ladrian has hunted the shadowy organization The Set, with his late uncle and his sister among their leaders, since they started kidnapping people with the power of allomancy in their bloodlines. When Detective Marcy Combs and her partner Wayne find stockpiled weapons bound for the outer city of Bilming, this opens a new lead. Conflict between the capital Elendel and the outer cities only favors The Set, and their tendrils now reach to the Elendel Senate, whose corruption Wax and his wife Steris have sought to expose, and Bilming is even more entangled. After Wax discovers a new type of explosives that can unleash unprecedented destruction and realizes that The Set must already have it, an immortal Kandra serving Scadrial's god Harmony reveals that Bilming has fallen under the influence of another god, Trell, who worshipped by The Set. And Trell isn't the only factor at play from the larger Cosmere. Marcy is recruited by off-worlders with strange abilities who claim their goal is to protect Scadrial at any cost. Wax must choose between whether to set aside his rocky relationship with God and once again become the sword that Harmony has groomed him to be. If no one steps forward to be the hero Scadrial needs, the planet and its millions of people will come to a sudden and calamitous ruin. Alright, so there's a lot going on there, kind of just in that early synopsis. So as you say, it kind of sets the stage for where we're at. It's several years after the events of the Bands of Mourning. And the world of Scadrial is really moving into an industrial revolution. With the events of Bands of Mourning, you meet the Southern Scadrial, and this really kind of sparks a technological revolution where the Northern Scadrials are trying to catch up technologically wise because they realize these Southern Scadrials have so much better technology than us, and using. So the only thing that really can protect them from those Scadrials, the Southern Scadrials, is the Bands of Mourning. So that's kind of the political power struggle that's kind of going on. As you see now with this industrialization, Elendel is trying to solidify its power. All the outer cities are getting bigger. They're becoming bigger players in this world. Elendel is no longer that hub that it once was, and it's trying to secure its power. I really like the mix of the political kind of machinations going on with that really looming threat, as was said in the synopsis there, of that this powerful destructive weapon that could have massive ramifications on the world and the citizens of Scadrial. And so I really liked how this book was kind of put together. It was really well kind of structured and had such a good flow to it that when you were dealing with certain events and certain characters, you just wanted more of them. I think Brandon has such an excellent job of mixing tension and then driving the plot forward, where he never kind of leaves you hanging. In a sense, he kind of always tells you when an event is happening. So a good example of this is like when you're a character and you hear a knock at the door, and then it cuts to black, and then there's the next chapter, and you're like, oh, what's going to happen? Whereas with Brandon, you hear the knock at the door, and he opens the door, and it's the pizza guy. So then you kind of get excited for like the next chapter, because then he's going to be dealing with the pizza guy, right? So it's a very silly kind of like analogy or like example, but he doesn't leave. He kind of tells you what's going to happen, or shows you, and then you get excited for what's going to happen next. You say, "Oh, that's cool! I want to see what's going on with that character again." Right? So he's a great mix of that, where all the characters, I felt, all the POV characters, because there's about, I guess, 4 main POV characters with Wax, Steris, Wayne, and Marcy. They all really kind of blended well, and there's never one where I felt like, okay, I don't really care about that plot. I really just want to go back to this. And I think there was a really good mix. There was some I wish we had a little bit more Steris. I just love Steris' character, from especially her development and growth from where she was in like Alloy of Law, where it was just this boring, misunderstood character that you was like, I'm never gonna like her. And then she grows so much in like Bands of Mourning, and then she just grows even more in Lost Metal, and she just becomes so interesting and fascinating that you're like, wow, I really love what he did with this character's development. So, love Steris. And then, we get back to, talk about Wax and Wayne. So, they're obviously our main duo. They're the guys who are, as we said, Wax is kind of in, I guess he's going through a crisis of faith, where he's kind of dealt with the events that have happened in his past. He's moved past them, and he has his new life. With his family, and then with his position. He's no longer this lawman out there. He's a senator, and he has had to look out for the lives of thousands of people or millions of people under his care. So Wax is really kind of dealing with that. Can I lay the lawman behind me? He's also an older character. He's in his 50s now, and he's struggling. He realizes he can't be that character, but sometimes he's been so well groomed and trained throughout his life of crime, dealing with criminals, that sometimes the sword cannot be always laid down. It has to be picked up for one last time, and if you don't, someone else, someone may never do it, right? So I just really liked Wax in this book. I liked where he's at. I liked where his family dynamics were. I liked the new position he was in, and I liked his reluctance as well. Wax, gets a lot of stick for saying, he's not a very complex character. He's very boring. He's very wooden. I don't find Wax wooden at all. I find him super engaging. I really care about his motivations. I really care about his position. And I always kind of like the position he's always in, where he kind of always comes down on the right side. He doesn't make that easy choice. He makes the hard choice. And, kind of really lives up to that Ladrian name. It's such a fantastic character. And in the end of the book, Wax, I think, got the conclusion I wanted for him, and it was a very satisfying conclusion. But I just love Wax's ability to interact with all the characters around him. He has such a great relationship with every character he interacts with, between Marcy to his wife Steris and then Wayne. I really loved how Brandon, uses this character to mix a lot of intimate moments as well as high action moments, and I think Wax is one of his best characters. He's probably not as engaging as like a main character as Vin, and I think that's what the biggest downfall of Era 2 is just expectations. I think so many people came into Era 2 expecting Era 1, and when they didn't get that, they were left disappointed. And that's really no fault on Brandon. That's probably more of a fault on themselves, where Era 2 is not Era 1. And that's why I love it, because it's so different from Era 1. So Waxilium, great character. His payoff in the end was so well done. So continuing on with Wayne. So Wayne is like a very dynamic and interesting character, and he probably has the greatest growth from where he is in book 1, and that realization and, not coming of age, but just coming to full adulthood, I guess. And Wayne really never grows up. He's an eternal child. Wayne really is a complex character. He's kind of seen as a goofball, but he does ultimately have a heart of gold, and he is trying to better himself and trying to pay this. He's one of those things. He's one of those characters where it kind of shows you that you're your own worst critic, and I really appreciate Wayne's growth throughout books 1 to book 4. And he may not be a favorite character, but I think Wayne has such a fantastic trajectory in this book that you just can't help but just be engaged and interested with him. He is like one of those characters. Like I said, he's always interesting when he's on the screen. So I really liked Wayne's character in this. And then Marcy, to talk about her character, I really liked her because she has a lot of growth as well from where she is to book 1 to book 4, but then also the wider kind of Cosmere connections kind of going on with that she deals with in this book are really kind of what expand this book to the level it is. You really need Marcy's character because you get to meet a certain group that is well known throughout the Cosmere. If you've read some of Stormlight, is she's kind of bringing those characters in. You see different kind of magic systems going on that talks of different gods like Trell. And it's just great. Marcy's chapters probably were the most engaging in terms of, if you're a big Cosmere fan, you're going to love her chapters. But one thing I want to say that is kind of a minor negative for this story is, you kind of have to be a little bit more well-read in Brandon's works. Like, you really kind of have to understand certain magic systems, or you might not get some of the connections if you haven't read, say, like Emperor's Soul, if you haven't read like Secret Histories or Elantris, and a little bit of Stormlight too, because words and planets and cities and names gonna get mentioned, and if you don't understand them, they're gonna go straight over your head. So that is like one minor, I guess it's not a minor gripe, but I mean, this is it's Era 2 Mistborn, so you kind of gotta have all the understanding of what's going on in Era 1, but then when he throws in all these wider Cosmere connections, you kind of got to understand the words he's banding about. Like, only, I think, really deep, like, this is one of those books, too, where, like, the guys over at the 17th Shard, and, like, all the deep, Cosmere fans are going to be, like, theory crafting and just, like, mind mapping the heck out of it, because there's so many connections going on, and just little mentions of here and there that really kind of piece a grander story together. I mean, if you're a Cosmere scholar, I guess, or well connected and well read in the Cosmere, you're gonna love it. You're gonna just be like a kid in a candy store piecing everything together. And I think one of these things too is this book will always be kind of interesting because it'll probably function better on a reread. The more Cosmere you read, the more connections that you're going to understand, and you could really sit there and go down the rabbit hole, like, okay, if this happened at this event, we're here now, what's going on in Stormlight. You could piece this massive timeline together. So there's that. If you really are a big fan of Brandon's work, you're going to love this. You're going to love these Cosmere connections. Just the mentions of Trell and Harmony and other kind of shards and stuff like that, and other kind of magics kind of come into play. It really blows open the world of Scadrial, because if you think about it, there's two kind of revolutions going on. Scadrial is now going through this industrial revolution where the characters are just trying, the world's trying to catch up with the technology, and now they're going to be going through like a magical, or I guess like a Cosmere revolution, where they're going to be realizing they're not alone in the universe, and that there's other planets out there, and there's other beings and massive entities that want to do them harm. So a lot of kind of big things happening in Scadrial in this book. So I really appreciate those connections. Just kind of get on with the overall plot. I talked about, as I read out in the synopsis there, a lot of interesting stuff going on. They're having to juggle the political powers at B, with Elendel and the other cities. But then they're also having to deal with these cosmic powers and having to fight gods, essentially, where, Harmony is at war with Trell. And now you're having to have these two fights that all these characters are going to have to be, torn between. Is, do I, save this? They're all kind of related, but they, it's a real, like, bigger stakes. There's a lot more at play here. And I really kind of enjoyed, how the plot drove these forward. And one thing I will say about Brandon, he is, like I said, he's a master at developing plots. He is an outline writer, but he really knows when to ramp up the action and then also slow it down at certain moments. And that slowdown is actually the most appreciated, because it kind of gives you those heartfelt moments, and gives you those moments to kind of take that breath before the big action happens. And I will say at the end of this book, there is always that big classic Sanderlanche. It was here. It did not disappoint. Some of the action moments are some of the best in Mistborn, I think, with this book. So, like, this book, when it had highs, it had really big highs. I wouldn't say there's any very big lows for this book, but another kind of gripe I want to get into is the comedy. The comedy really does not work for me in this series. I don't think Brandon is a funny author. I don't think he can write comedy. I actually think he's quite bad at comedy. I know he said before that Terry Pratchett is his favorite author, but the thing is, he's not Terry Pratchett. Brandon, I don't think, is funny at all. Or his brand of comedy does not work for me. I've never really laughed at kind of any of Brandon's jokes. I did laugh at one point in this book, but it was more of like a circumstance, kind of like, oh, these circumstances are just absurd and funny. But other than that, like, I've never laughed at his jokes when they were intentional. And I think that's a really big knock for this series for me, or just in general for Brandon. I don't like his brand of comedy. The comedy is used too much a little bit in this book, where you're kind of beaten over the head with it sometimes. He uses comedy kind of like a hammer and a nail. Everything looks like a nail, so he's just like, whack. He's just going to hit it as hard as he can. And it doesn't work sometimes. And I kind of wish he didn't use the comedy to take away from some of the, the high action points, and then also some of the emotional points. Like, the comedy's it's not used to break tension. It's just there to be stupid. And yeah, Brandon's like I said, just Brandon's style of comedy does not work for me, and that is gonna overall bring the story down or the book rating down for me. That's it, really. But I will say, you know, his action is always good. His action is always on point. He writes like very cinematically. It's almost like watching an anime or watching like it's an anime or, you know, like an action like cartoon. It's so well described and so dynamic that it's very easy to visualize. So I really like that. But overall, guys, this is a fantastic book. I'm going to say it's probably my second favorite in all of Mistborn Era 2, and I like Mistborn Era 2 better than Era 1. So if I was to rank the books, I would probably say Shadows of Self, Lost Metal, Alloy of Law, and then Bands of Mourning. Just a great book. Like, it's just, there's so many things that are there that I like, you know, the powers of the gods kind of dueling, and then how the little guy has to kind of get, you know, take up these mantles and fight for the gods. And I just loved it. I love all the things that kind of happen in this book. There are some twists that kind of go on. There are some like shocking things. Like, oh wow, I did not expect that. And what I like is this book really kind of comes full circle, because there's certain things you dealt with in like Alloy of Law, or if you remember, like there were certain characters, like I think there were, you know, women and children being kidnapped that were allomancers, and they're like, what happened to them? And it never really kind of get answered. It gets answered in this book, and again, he comes back around and he ties up all these loose ends. And I really think Brandon did such a wonderful job with Era 2, and especially with the Lost Metal. It really kind of surpassed my expectation for what it was going to be. And overall, I'm going to give this one a 4.5 stars. If I was have to rate it on my rating list, I'm going to say this is going to get a TreeBeard seal of approval. Excellent book. Well worth the read. Really kind of finished off Era 2 in such a fantastic way. There is one minor complaint, and it's nothing to do with the book. It's to do with the publishers, and I got a bone to pick. All right, so I'm back here with my complaint, and this is the big complaint. Look how annoying this is. Where if you're a book collector, look at all the pictures, right? None of them are in a good spot. None of them align. They're just all like so annoying. But that's a minor gripe. Anyways, guys, that's my review of The Lost Metal. If you like this review, please like, comment, and subscribe. I hope it helped. Again, you know, I mentioned my positives, I mentioned my negatives. But, you know, if you want to talk about this book with me, hit me up in my Discord channel. There is a Brandon Sanderson Cosmere channel. We could talk about spoilers till the end of the day. And, you know, until we're blue in the face, really. But yeah, I loved Era 2. It was probably one of my favorite Brandon Sanderson Cosmere stories. And yeah, I'm ready for Era 3 now. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.